Sports Video Group is really excited to be in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59 and very, very happy to be catching up with a man who's become quite familiar with this event, Rob Alberino from the Kansas City Chiefs, who are going for historic 3 titles in a row. Rob, I feel like when I saw you in Miami at the 2020 Super Bowl, you were the man who'd been in the industry who hadn't gotten one. You're like the Dan Marino of video producers, and now you're going for 3 in a row. How's it feel?
I tell people this, I could not win for 28 years, and now I can't lose for 2. So I'm hoping we can continue on that because it's kind of fun to be at the top. But no, I remember actually I was on the other side of the ball on that one. I was with the 49ers at the time. But no, it's been a magical run. This is my 4th season, but actually my 7th with the Chiefs. I was here, I left, and I came back, but 4th consecutive. So yeah, we're headed hopefully for history right now.
Yeah, so this is probably as good of a problem as you could hope to have. But as someone who really has grown up at the altar of storytelling. Like I said, it's a good problem to have when you're here continuously. How do you keep the story fresh? How do you keep the story exciting? Obviously, for your fans, they're bought in. You got star power. You've got history on your side. But how do you come back to an event like this and go, all right, how are we going to do it differently this time?
That's a great question. I think one of the best parts, too, is that the games help change the narrative and help change the story. So not every day is the same. Our pathway to the Super Bowl this year was very different than it was last year, and then it was the year before. I can't even believe I'm saying that. But our pathway has been different, and so the storylines are different. And I think with the women and men on my team, we've got about 20 of them here with us that flew with the team. The other ones are joining us in a couple of days. But basically, we sit down almost every day and we talk about the narrative. What is the narrative? And the narrative doesn't only rotate around Travis or Patrick or Taylor or whomever, but it's really the 53 guys on the team. It's the coaches behind the scenes. There's so many cool things that we can talk about, and we are literally out and about dividing and conquering to cover as many of those stories as possible.
So what are the top priorities for a team-focused video, media, social media production crew when you come to an event like this? Outside of the obvious, we're going to be there on game day getting some great footage with Super Bowl week. What are your top priorities, and what are you hoping to accomplish in the days leading up to and on Super Bowl Sunday, and hopefully an exciting Monday for you too?
Yeah, it's well, let's hope that too. So I think there's 2 things, and there's a little bit of a flex here, but we're the #1 team in YouTube right now. We literally were the first team outside of, I believe, the Warriors to eclipse the 1 million mark, and we're growing at literally 30,000 subscribers a week. It's unbelievable. So we're in the 1.1 range-ish there. So let's put that over to the side. We're also the #1 team by 7 figures in TikTok. And as you know, and I'm sure that all the viewers out there know, those are 2 very different things. I always joke that it's like being the best steak house and the best vegan restaurant all at once. Like, the 2 things don't go together. But when you're cutting for them, you have to think about, first of all, who are we creating for? Is it short form, mid form, long form? And as we're doing that, how are we going to distribute it? So I think we work backwards. We figure out where the heck this is going to, who we want it to go to, and then what stories do we want to tell, and on what platform. And that decides on what gear we're shooting, on who's shooting it, on when we're shooting it. I know that's a kind of a broad answer, but for us, our sort of content game plan does revolve around making sure we have a healthy dose on all those platforms. And we're still talking X, we're still talking Instagram and Facebook, but really, it becomes kind of a game for us. We're going to put a lot of eggs into our marquee show, The Franchise. That basket is a big basket. That's sort of our hard knocks. And that show typically ranges about 30 minutes. Our last Super Bowl show that we did last year was 71 minutes, that's a hunk of content right there. So we are covering all sorts of amazing things, lots of wires, lots of meetings, lots of all these really cool things. And then the short form stuff, you walked with us through the sort of the humble area where we're cutting, but we've got 12 edit stations, and our team is just cranking and spitting stuff out. So it's a pretty fun deal.
That's the thing I've always appreciated about you too, is that a lot of people who have worked a long time in the video industry, you mention vertical video and they kind of go, oh God. But you're right there in it, and you know the value of what it takes to make the brand really stand out on a platform that the younger generations have really embraced.
No, I appreciate that, and it was funny. We were just talking before we started rolling, and we're talking about some of the things that happen to kind of get you from point A to point B. And my wheels were turning as you were talking. I think one of the biggest things that as a guy who came up in the mid '90s with NFL Films and doing physical film, physically cutting on film, and then of course maybe some of the folks out there don't know this, but I was with the Eagles for 15 years. And so starting an in-house production group, it was very laid out. We're going to do 30-minute shows. Those shows are going to be on television. Where we are now, it has changed so great that I think the biggest piece of advice that I would suggest when people are creating is you got to roll with the punches. And for us, the punches, for me specifically, the punches are getting closer and closer and closer together. Every 6 months, something's amazing coming out. We talk about the gear that we're doing the interview on now versus the gear that my team is using. And both of them serve a perfect purpose. It's how do you use them and how do you roll with those changes. And it hasn't been hard to have the team acclimate to those changes. I think what we really want to do is just ask ourselves, like, what are the best tools, to get what we're trying to get? Or, boy, the things that we did 10 years ago just don't work now. Are we too proud to not accept that? Or do we sit down and we get some really young, incredible producers in, almost straight out of college, and I ask them to be courageous, raise their hands and tell us what would work. And sometimes it's this, and sometimes I can't wait for a hologram to come out of the ground and for Patrick to throw a ball to a play. I don't know.
He'll have how many titles by then?
Yeah,
I don't even know.
I don't know. Hopefully I'll be living on a beach somewhere at that point.
So obviously there's still a lot of work to be done, but when you reflect on where your team has been over the course of this year, what are some of the content highlights that stand out for you? What are some projects you're really proud of, whether you were involved in them or your team produced them?
It's amazing. We basically cover all of the work that we do and we log everything. And I want to say at one point we were somewhere in the 1,400 project range, which is crazy because that could be logo creation, or that could be a long form 70-minute show. A couple of ones that jump out that I would love to share with you is one is we actually did an old school harkening back to the Rankin and Bass Santa Claus is coming to town type claymation. We actually created claymation characters with an amazing company called No Mint out of London, and the artist was out of Milan, so I had to travel to Milan. A little bit of a
sneak that.
It was like, do you want to hang in Kansas City for a couple of days, or do you want to go to Milan? I'm like, I think I'll just hit Milan. So my crew and I went out there, and I wrote this script a couple of years ago, and my amazing CMO Laura Krug, she was like, she green-lighted it for us to do. We were creating this Christmas magic theme, which is carried over. That's been a great piece for us. We've done some amazing things. The media and marketing team created a movie with Hallmark. I think you mentioned that you had seen that too. I appreciate
Did watch that.
It was very Hallmark.
Premiere night as well.
It was wonderful, right? Those kind of things.
It was great.
But working on, just some of the smallest pieces to the franchise. The franchise is really a historical piece, and Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, who you hear his voice everywhere. He's a national, international voice for the Chiefs. Now, he had mentioned that when he calls games, he doesn't really call it for the here and now, meaning how many people are listening to the radio versus the television, right?
Sure.
Some, for sure, because it's iconic for them, but he's really calling for the use of it later, like the amazing Super Bowl calls that he's made, the amazing AFC Championship game calls that he's made. And I actually took that to heart, and I laid down one night and stared at the ceiling, and I'm like, we're cutting for later as well. Yes, we are cutting for the game now, but historically, the Hunts have done an amazing job being a part of the tapestry of football, and historically our job is to sort of be the mini NFL films for this team, and our team has exceeded my expectations. It's simply the best I've ever worked with.
Yeah, they are. There's a responsibility to what you guys are doing for sure. I'm kind of curious. I feel like I ask this question a lot of teams that are either at the Final Four. A team college makes a run at the Final Four, or at a Super Bowl, or at something like that. When you look at the media landscape that we're in now with the internet, you guys are feeding stuff to all those different platforms. You're at the top. You're setting the culture. You're the Papa Bear, as you described yourself, of your team. How do you set goals and expectations in a way where your team can feel like, I did a good job today, I did enough, when the internet can be an infinite void that you could send content into, and so your team passed out blue in the face? How do you set those expectations so that you feel satisfied with the job that you did?
So that's something that we struggle with because we do want to put some things out. So behind this amazing camera is a guy named Christian who had interviewed me a couple of years ago, and so I'm going to go back to that interview. And he's so handsome.
Did I steal his question? Did he ask the same question?
But we did talk about this, and it's a pretty interesting piece. You can put on a buffet table just eons of food, and I've mentioned this in a lot of speeches and in a lot of cool podcasts that I've done with your team and others. If you eat that food so fast, if there's so much of it, A, you're going to get sick. And B, it's just kind of like white noise if there's too much. What we do is we really try to focus on that filet mignon, right? If you serve somebody 8 ounces of filet mignon, they're going to want to come back and eat that all the time. If you serve them 10 pounds of steak in about a half an hour, you're going to know you made a huge mistake.
They'll be full.
So we do really try to make a thought process of like what's going to be impactful. Where do we want to put our efforts? And frankly, I think that less is more. We are still creating a ton of content, but less is more, and putting that quality over quantity is really, really important. So there are a lot of ideas, I don't want to say that die on the vine, Brandon, but that we have to maybe push to the side for a minute. And we sort of high stack rank those, going back to what I said originally. Where are they going to air? Who are they going to air to? All those things. And that's kind of how we do it, so that everybody does have a piece of the pie. And there are some people working on projects that are going to be out front, and some that maybe are a little bit more of a long form piece that might air just down the road. But I think what we do is, as a crew, we try to manage our sort of chessboard so that it plays really well, for a nice long haul.
All right, last one before we let you go. You've been really generous with your time. We've got a lot of people who follow Sports Video Group, who obviously are big-time executives in the industry, but we got a lot of people who aspire to work in this industry as well, or to continue to climb the ranks. What's your advice for someone who either wants to be in a position like yours, or maybe as young as wants to work on a team like this? I know it's really solid advice to say never chase a logo. You want to work for good people. But for someone who does say, man, one day I'm going to be shooting and editing at a Super Bowl, what would your advice be?
That's a great question. By the way, Sports Video Group's too long. We just call it SVG. I'm doing an interview with SVG. 65 TPTs doing it. It's cool. It sounds cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a question that I get a lot. How many times am I going to call from my uncle's brother's son? Hey, can you talk to young Brandon and give him some advice? And my advice is this. Look, I never want to take anybody's dreams away, but you just have to understand that there is a process. There is no easy way to get there. I think if you are a young up-and-coming producer, if you are somebody who is interested specifically in this business, start taking those steps now, right? I would say this is no plug here, but I would get very, very comfortable with Adobe products. Understand musicality. Understand the process that it takes. Pick up a book and read it, and be a good writer. I think there's a lot of things that have to happen to get to where you want to go. Then if you want to work for a sports team, if you want to chase a ring, whether it's hockey, basketball, baseball, football, and all the other sports, I think the most important thing is, great time to be poor is when you're young. Right? Like, it takes time, and you have to connect yourself with good people. And the old adage of paying dues, I think it's important. I think getting an understanding, working next to somebody is an education. And you might have an education at school, but then the education at an internship, invaluable. Pick up the stuff, cut every day, write every day, watch things that you like, try to replicate them, and find somebody who's willing to take you under their wing and start from the bottom and work up. All the people who have been successful in my taking myself out of the mix, in my estimation, have all done that path. And it's grind it, work hard, and you got to love it, because most likely it's a little bit of a run. You will eventually get paid, but macaroni and cheese is 30 cents a metric ton, and you'll probably eat a lot of it for the first couple of years until you break in. So it takes a bit.
All right, Rob. Well, we're huge fans of what you and your team do, so thanks a lot for taking the time. Wishing you nothing but the best the rest of this week.
I appreciate
Thanks for the time.
Go Chiefs.
All right, for more of everything going on here at Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Christian, Ken, and I are all over the place. We got some great content for you. Head on over to sportsvideo.org. We'll see you soon.